What if the beginning of your life wasn't your first breath, but a moment long before anyone saw your face? Picture this, a space not defined by time or geography, but by awareness, a conscious, quiet dimension where your soul reviewed its past, examined its purpose, and selected the exact conditions of its next journey. Before the first beat of your heart, there was a choice. This isn't abstract poetry or spiritual fantasy. It is the foundation of a body of ancient knowledge now being echoed by modern science. Quantum physics, particularly the study of non-local consciousness, has begun to reveal that consciousness might not originate in the brain at all. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and physicist Sir Roger Penrose's theory of orchestrated objective reduction, orchestra, suggests that consciousness exists in quantum processes within neurons, and that it may exist independently of the body. Simply put, what you've always felt in your bones, that there's something more to you than just cells and memories, is being scientifically explored today. Imagine, then, that your soul, as pure energy and memory, entered a liminal phase, a sacred in-between before entering this world. In Tibetan Buddhism, this is known as the Bardo, a 49-day state where the soul encounters not punishment or reward, but reflection and decision. What did it see in that mirror? Perhaps the faces of those you would one day love. Perhaps the lessons you've spent your entire life learning. We often speak of life as a random journey, one dictated by genetics, social status, or luck. But what if those very circumstances were selected with intention? What if you chose the challenges, the heartbreaks, even the illnesses, not as burdens but as catalysts for growth? For a generation raised on personal responsibility and lifelong resilience, this perspective offers something deeply empowering. You were never powerless. You were always part of the design. Across traditions and time, from the ancient Egyptians to early Christian Gnostics, this idea recurs, that life is not thrust upon us, but entered into by sacred contract. In practical terms, think about the defining moments of your life, the decisions you made, the people who changed you, the coincidences that didn't feel accidental. Now imagine these not as flukes, but as markers along a path your soul helped draft. Science, again, is beginning to catch up. Near-death experiences studied by cardiologist Dr. Pim van Lommel show consistent reports of souls observing their lives in panoramic review, often with a sense of choice about returning. What if this isn't an end-of-life phenomenon, but a glimpse into a pre-life one? This isn't a call to abandon logic. It's an invitation to expand it. The emotions you've carried, the weight of grief, the ache of missed chances, the moments of inexplicable clarity, they aren't random. They're echoes of a blueprint that lives beneath your ordinary memory. That blueprint becomes more than theory when we begin to apply it. What if we approached our current struggles, whether health issues, family rifts, or aging itself, not as unfair interruptions, but as parts of a curriculum we once chose to study? This reframing doesn't make pain vanish, but it makes it meaningful. You are not at the mercy of time. You are a soul traveling through it with purpose. Now, in this stage of life, when so much of the world pushes you to slow down, to withdraw, to become less visible, this truth becomes all the more urgent. You are not fading, you are integrating. The experiences of decades past are not just memories, but keys. They can guide younger generations, not just through advice, but through embodied wisdom. You don't have to teach by preaching. Your presence, your stories, your clarity are enough. If you start treating every moment, even the quiet ones, as part of your soul's journey, you give others permission to do the same. So here is your invitation. Begin to remember, not through forced meditation or rigid belief, but through gentle observation. Watch what patterns keep reappearing in your life. Reflect on the moments that broke you open and the moments that stitched you back together. Speak them aloud. Share them with someone younger. Write them down. The world needs more than your opinions, it needs your remembrance. And if you ever doubt the value of your life, remember this. Before you were born, your soul reviewed every possible path it could take. And it chose this one. It chose you. If you've ever sat in a quiet room and suddenly remembered a person you haven't seen in decades, or felt the weight of a decision you made long ago ripple through your present life, then you've touched the edge of what ancient traditions and now emerging science describe as the soul's continuity. According to a manuscript once buried for over 1,000 years and now resurfacing in whispers among scholars and seekers, your life didn't begin with a name or a heartbeat, it began with a review, a reflection, and a choice. In the 49 days before birth, the soul enters what ancient Tibetan texts call the intermediate state, a conscious, reflective dimension between lives. During this phase, the soul does not sleep. It remembers, it evaluates, prepares, but more than anything, it aligns. Picture a room filled with light, not physical light, but a radiant clarity in which the soul is shown its past lives, its triumphs, its regrets, the recurring emotional patterns it has yet to break. And in that space of perfect awareness, the soul begins the process of selection, choosing the next incarnation not as a sentence, but as a syllabus. Modern neuroscience is beginning to suggest that memory itself is more than just a cognitive function. Epigenetics, the study of how behavior and environment can cause changes that affect the way genes work, reveals that trauma and emotional experience can be passed on biologically. Researchers at Emory University demonstrated that mice trained to fear a certain smell passed that fear onto their offspring through changes in DNA expression. What if human souls carry not just genetic memory, but energetic memory? If trauma can echo across bloodlines, is it such a leap to consider it echoing across lifelines? Now think about this practically. Have you ever noticed that certain types of people keep entering your life, even in different forms? Perhaps someone emotionally unavailable, someone who mirrors your past self, someone who challenges your patience in the exact same way? What if these recurring dynamics aren't signs of bad luck or coincidence, but spiritual curriculum? What if your soul is not trapped in cycles, but testing itself through them, seeking completion through experience? In this light, challenges begin to look less like burdens and more like invitations. For example, if someone in their later years finds themselves constantly reflecting on unresolved conflict with a parent or a child, that isn't just nostalgia or regret. It could be the soul urging you to finally shift a pattern that it has carried through many lives. The manuscript teaches that during the pre-birth window, the soul meets with higher intelligences, call them guides, elders, or simply aspects of your own higher self. Together, they map the incarnation not by convenience, but by resonance. The soul chooses circumstances that will most efficiently activate the lessons it needs to master. This is why some people are born into comfort, others into chaos. It's not a hierarchy, it's alignment. To evolve through compassion, you may need to confront betrayal. To awaken inner strength, you may need to experience loss. These are not punishments. They are spiritual catalysts. From a scientific standpoint, we now understand the brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to rewire itself through experience. This means that even deep emotional habits and thought patterns can change, given the right awareness and intention. If the soul chooses a life path to overcome a specific karmic pattern, then each struggle becomes a doorway into transformation. The pain is real, yes, but it is purposeful. For instance, consider a man who has struggled his whole life with being undervalued. Rather than asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" the shift in perspective becomes, "What is this trying to teach me about my own value?" This question is not just spiritual, it is neurological. When we change the way we relate to our experiences, we activate new neural circuits. Meaning, growth, and healing follow. So what can we do with this understanding in everyday life? Start by paying attention to your patterns, not the obvious ones, but the subtle emotional themes that keep repeating. Write them down. Reflect on the emotions that accompany them. Ask yourself not what went wrong, but what part of you is being called to evolve. Then, take action that contradicts the old pattern. If you've always avoided conflict, have one gentle, honest conversation. If you've always carried shame, speak your truth to someone who loves you. Each small act of conscious choice becomes a declaration that you are aware, that you remember, and that you're no longer walking through life as a passive participant. This perspective doesn't erase life's tragedies, but it reframes them. Instead of being defined by what happened to you, you become the one who understands why it happened for you. And from that place, your presence becomes healing for others, not because you have all the answers, but because you live with the quiet certainty that even your pain has purpose. For those in the later chapters of life, This realization can bring immense peace. You are not running out of time. You are arriving into it. Every memory, every loss, every love has been part of a design your soul once helped shape. You don't need to believe blindly in reincarnation to feel the truth of this. Just look at the people who have transformed after loss. Look at the strength that appears in the aftermath of despair. There is more to us than meets the eye, and much more to this life than what began in a delivery room. The soul's path is not linear. It spirals, it returns, and when you begin to see your current life as a meaningful piece of a much larger story, something extraordinary happens. You stop surviving and start remembering. There comes a moment in every honest life when the old answers no longer satisfy, when even our deepest beliefs feel like borrowed clothes that no longer fit. If you felt this quiet restlessness, this subtle but persistent urge to dig deeper into life's meaning, then you are not alone. You are awakening to something your soul has always known. For decades, you may have lived within systems that offered certainty, religious doctrine, scientific reasoning, cultural traditions. But when you look closely, you begin to see the gaps, the places where these systems stop short of explaining the most personal, profound mysteries of your existence. Why did you come into this life with the parents you had, the struggles you faced, the instincts you carried before anyone taught you anything? The ancient manuscript we've been exploring does not suggest you were merely born into circumstance. It asserts something far more radical, that you chose it. And this is where the tension begins. Because if that's true, if your soul selected this life with intention, then what does that mean for how we view suffering, injustice, even illness? That's not an easy question. It challenges everything we've been taught about being victims of fate or passengers in a story someone else is writing. But it also opens a door to a deeper kind of power, the power of conscious authorship. Science is beginning to tiptoe into this territory, often without realizing it. Consider the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, a former cell biologist who found that our beliefs can influence gene expression through epigenetics. His research revealed that cells respond not just to their environment but to the perception of that environment. In simpler terms, what you believe changes your biology. That means the lens through which you see the world has the power to activate or suppress physical health, emotional resilience, and even how you age. Now imagine applying that understanding to your spiritual experience. If your perception of pain shifts from punishment to purpose, your relationship with it changes entirely. You begin to respond rather than react. You begin to see obstacles as invitations and wounds as doorways. This is not just philosophy, it is practical transformation grounded in biology. Now let's take this further. Imagine two people who both face a chronic illness. One sees it as cruel, unfair, a sign of life's randomness. The other, though still suffering, sees it as a mirror, an experience that invites introspection, emotional release, perhaps even reconciliation with aspects of themselves they have long ignored. Studies in psychosomatic medicine show that how a patient perceives their illness can directly affect recovery outcomes, stress levels, and immune function. So the shift we're talking about isn't just spiritual, it has measurable, practical impact. And for those of us in our later years, facing health challenges, mobility changes, or loss, this reframing becomes vital. You may not choose the details of what happens to your body, but how you meet those moments can redefine everything. The manuscript also points to a powerful concept that most institutions prefer to leave untouched. The soul is not passive. It does not sit idly, waiting for divine commands or random luck. It navigates. It negotiates. During the 49 days before birth, it is said that the soul reviews its karmic patterns and actively collaborates with higher intelligence to determine the next life path, not for reward or punishment, but for maximum learning. Picture it as an architect choosing terrain that will challenge, refine, and ultimately expand the structure of who you are. And if you find yourself asking why you've had to go through specific heartaches or losses, this perspective offers something no dogma can, not blind hope, but meaningful clarity. The hardship was not meaningless. The suffering was not arbitrary. It was selected as a furnace in which a part of you could be forged. For example, if your life has included the pain of losing a child, a spouse, or a lifelong friend, you know that no words can ever truly comfort that absence. But from this framework, Those moments of loss become thresholds, openings through which love deepens, presence sharpens, and gratitude becomes more real than any possession or achievement. Some of the most profound emotional intelligence we develop as human beings arises not despite our suffering, but because of it. This is why ancient philosophies, from Stoicism to Buddhism, remind us that pain is not the enemy, it is a teacher. And when science catches up with this idea, as it does in the growing field of post-traumatic growth, we begin to understand that adversity can indeed leave people stronger, more compassionate, and more purpose-driven than before. So what does this mean for you, right now, as someone who has walked through decades of living, loving, losing, and learning? It means you have more access to wisdom than you may have realized. The very fact that you're still here, still seeking, still asking deeper questions, is a sign that your soul is active in its journey. And perhaps, more importantly, it means your story is not winding down, it's ripening. You are not meant to fade quietly into the background. You are meant to become a living archive of insight, a bridge between generations, a voice that can gently awaken others simply by telling the truth of your own life. That truth includes the pain, the mistakes, the regrets, but also the resilience, the beauty, the humor, and the growth that emerged through it all. Let this chapter in your life be defined by remembrance, not regret. Begin to reflect not only on what happened but on how those events shaped the soul within you. Revisit your past not to relive it but to reframe it. Ask yourself, if I chose this life, what was I hoping to learn from this moment? That question alone can transform memory into medicine. And when you answer it honestly, you'll find yourself stepping out of survival and into legacy not as a title or achievement, but as a steady light that reminds others. You came here for a reason. You lived it fully, and now you remember why. At some point in life, you begin to notice a strange pattern. The most profound growth doesn't come from comfort, but from difficulty. The moments that changed you the most were rarely the easiest. Perhaps it was the illness that forced you to slow down and see yourself differently. Perhaps it was the heartbreak that shattered your identity just enough to let something deeper emerge. These are not just emotional moments. They are spiritual initiations, and the ancient manuscript we've been exploring describes them as carefully chosen elements in your soul's curriculum. In those 49 days before birth, when the soul stands at the threshold of incarnation, it does not randomly fall into a body or a family. It evaluates, reflects, and aligns with specific experiences it needs to evolve. And here's the challenging part. This includes suffering. Not because the soul enjoys pain, but because pain, when met with awareness, becomes the fastest and most direct path to transformation. This is a truth echoed in both mystical traditions and modern science. Dr. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and founder of logotherapy, wrote that suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. He wasn't romanticizing hardship. He was revealing a fundamental principle of human psychology. The presence of purpose changes everything. In his research, people who could find personal meaning in their experiences, no matter how painful, were more resilient and more likely to recover emotionally and spiritually. This is where philosophy and science meet. Post-traumatic growth, a field studied by psychologists like Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, shows that many individuals report increased appreciation for life, deeper relationships, and a greater sense of purpose after navigating loss, trauma, or crisis. It doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means the soul integrates it, metabolizes it, and grows through it. In this way, the soul's choice of a difficult life is not a sign of misfortune but of maturity. Older souls, the manuscript suggests, often take on heavier burdens, not because they deserve to suffer, but because they seek refinement. Just as raw ore must be placed into fire to become gold, the soul enters the friction of human life to burn away illusion and reveal its true nature. You may be living proof of this. If you've faced great challenges, poverty, grief, rejection, and have emerged more compassionate, more thoughtful, more grounded in what matters, then you are not broken. You are refined. And it is that refinement that becomes your gift to the world. But we must be careful here. This is not about glorifying pain. It is about reclaiming its meaning. Pain without perspective can be cruel, but pain with purpose becomes power. That's why it's essential to ask the right questions. Instead of, why is this happening to me? Try, what is this trying to awaken in me? Instead of, how can I avoid this? Try, what is this calling me to remember? These questions are not just spiritual, they are neurological. The brain changes in response to the way we frame our experiences. Neuroscientist Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett explains that the brain constructs meaning from the inside out. Your interpretation of events is not just mental commentary. It shapes your emotions, your health, even your immune system. When you shift the narrative from victimhood to authorship, your entire physiology responds. You move from stress and contraction to openness and clarity. Let's make this practical. Think of a recurring difficulty in your life. Maybe it's a strained relationship, a health issue, or an old grief you never fully processed. Now imagine that this was not an accident, but a mirror your soul chose to face. Ask yourself, what quality is this situation trying to cultivate in me? Is it patience, forgiveness, courage, humility? Then ask yourself how you can take one small action today to embody that quality. It could be a phone call you've been avoiding, a journal entry you've been afraid to write, or a simple moment of stillness where you allow yourself to feel without judgment. These acts are not trivial. They are sacred. They are the way the soul reclaims its power, piece by piece, in ordinary life. And for those of us in our later years, there's a special urgency to this process. This is not the end of the road. It's the summit. From here, you can see the entire path with greater clarity. You have the chance to make sense of the patterns, to gather the wisdom, and to pass it on. You don't need to fix the world. But by embodying this deeper perspective, by living from a place of acceptance and awareness, you give others permission to do the same. Your presence becomes medicine. Your story becomes a guidepost. Your life becomes the very thing your soul hoped it would be, a lantern in the dark, lit not despite the fire, but because of it. So lean into the challenges not with fear, but with curiosity. Trust that they are not interruptions. They are initiations. You are not being punished. You are being remembered. There comes a time, especially in the later chapters of life, when the questions that once felt too vast or too distant begin to rise more clearly. Who am I, really? Why did I come here? And what is left for me to do before I leave? These are not abstract puzzles or poetic musings. They are spiritual signals, invitations from your soul asking you to remember what it already knows. The ancient manuscript that speaks of the 49 days before birth doesn't offer commandments or dogma. It offers a mirror, and in that mirror you begin to see that the life you've lived, the choices you've made, the patterns you've repeated, the people who keep returning in different forms is not a coincidence. It is a reflection, and that reflection is the key to remembering. Neuroscience tells us that memory is not just a record of the past but a tool for the future. When you remember meaningfully, you don't just relive, you rewire. The hippocampus, the region of your brain responsible for memory, connects directly to the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making and imagination. This means that looking back with awareness shapes how you move forward, even now, even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. And this is where the practical magic happens. The more you reflect with intention, the more clearly your original blueprint begins to emerge. You may have noticed how certain people make you feel instantly at home, while others trigger deep discomfort for no obvious reason. Or how certain places feel sacred without explanation. Or how a passion or talent seemed to come through you before you were old enough to explain it. These are not random experiences. They are echoes of what your soul chose to carry into this life. The manuscript teaches that even your gifts and your wounds come from the same source, pre-birth agreements, designed not just to test you but to reveal you. When Carl Jung spoke of the individuation process, he described it as the integration of the conscious and unconscious parts of the self. In essence, it is the journey of becoming who you already are. And that's the paradox. The soul doesn't come here to discover something outside itself. It comes here to remember what it already carries, to unfold it piece by piece through experience, reflection, and choice. You do not have to be a mystic to understand this. All it takes is presence and a willingness to listen. Start by noticing the patterns. What has life tried to teach you again and again? Have you struggled to be seen, to forgive, to let go? Those are not flaws. They are coordinates. They point you to the exact lessons you came here to embody. And the good news is, it is never too late to complete those lessons. The brain retains its plasticity even in advanced age. Studies by Dr. Michael Merzenich and others show that older adults can form new neural pathways through focused learning and reflection. In spiritual terms, that means that every time you forgive someone, tell the truth, or make peace with a long-held regret, you are not only healing emotionally, you are rewiring your consciousness. You are literally reshaping your mind to align with your soul. And this has real-world impact. Peace of mind improves cardiovascular health. Forgiveness has been linked to lower cortisol levels. Emotional resilience strengthens the immune system. The soul's remembrance, it turns out, is good medicine for the body. You may be wondering how to begin this process now at this stage of life. Begin simply. Find a quiet moment, each day if you can, and ask yourself not what you must do, but what wants to be remembered. Let your memories rise, not just as stories, but as symbols. That childhood fear, that repeated relationship pattern, that unfulfilled dream, they are breadcrumbs. Write them down. Speak them to someone you trust, or reflect on them in solitude. But whatever you do, don't dismiss them. They are your soul's language, speaking in the only way it can through the fabric of your life. And if you feel a rising sense of urgency or restlessness lately, understand that this is not a sign of something being wrong. It is a sign that your time of remembrance has arrived, that your soul is now ready to complete something it started long ago. You don't have to figure it all out. You only need to listen. The world around you will begin to respond. You'll notice more synchronicities. Certain books or people will appear at just the right time. Old emotions will surface not to overwhelm you, but to be released. This is the natural unfolding of spiritual memory. It may not look dramatic, but it will feel undeniable. You will feel lighter. You will feel clearer. You will stop asking what you should be and start embracing who you have always been. And this is the legacy you leave, not just the stories you've lived, but the wisdom you've harvested from them. If you want to pass something down to the next generation, let it be this: that your life was not random, that your pain was not wasted, and that remembering who you are is the greatest gift you can give yourself and the world. So do not wait. Begin today. Reflect without judgment. Listen without resistance. Speak your truth. Heal what you can. Love boldly. Forgive freely. And remember this above all else: before you were born, you chose this life. And now, in remembering, you choose it again. This is not the end. This is your return.